So for over 2 decades now, we've had what's called the Super Bowl losers curse, where the team that loses Super Bowl one year doesn't make it back the next year. A lot of reasons that happens. Salary cap free agency era, it's really hard to keep your core roster intact. You only have so much money to pay so many guys so much. Guys want to get paid, and other teams are willing to overpay because these guys made it to the Super Bowl. We see it happen year in and year out. You know, and there's also that mental deal of getting all the way to the biggest game and then losing, and then on top of that, a lot of things have to go right one year. You have to stay healthy. You have to do typically a lot of other things, get some breaks, some big plays to go your way. It's really hard to get that to happen back-to-back years. So it's not surprising that the Bills of the 90s are the last team to make it back-to-back years as a Super Bowl loser. Frankly, we have a lot of teams that don't make it back as Super Bowl winners. It can be hard to defend. Look at the Denver Broncos. They won last year's Super Bowl. They didn't even make the playoffs this year. So it's really, really tough. But I thought the Carolina Panthers were better positioned to, even if they didn't maybe make it to the Super Bowl, they were at least going to be a playoff team again in 2016. It's a team that won 3 straight division crowns. You had a team coming off a 15-1 season that still appeared to have an elite level defense, primarily back intact. You had the defending league MVP, who looked like it really progressed in 2015 and was ready to fully establish himself as an elite quarterback at the NFL level. Things look good. Lack of big-time competition in the NFC South. I thought the Panthers, if nothing else, were going to have a bit of a cakewalk through the division and then make it to the playoffs and see what happens with their formula for being able to run the ball, get some big plays on offense, and then being able to stop the run on defense. And then once the offseason happened, things got kind of funky. You already had the issue with Cam in terms of mentality and what happened in the Super Bowl and how he kind of didn't show up to play, frankly, and then the way he kind of conducted and carried himself. It seemed like that cloud really hung over him the entire 2016 season. Then you had the Josh Norman debacle, a franchise taking him, and then saying, hey, we don't want to pay the guy anymore, so we'll let him go and get nothing immediately in return, let the Redskins sign him. I guess I shouldn't be that surprised when all said and done that this team got off to a 1-5 start. I over-ignored and minimized the impact of losing Josh Norman. Now, I don't think that one guy should have led to the disaster that was the Panthers' secondary and pass defense in 2016. I don't think that was the only factor. It was definitely a big one. I also think there was part of it, too, that I didn't look at it close enough and really sit there and say, hey, is Cam Newton potentially going to get mind-fucked by what happened with the Super Bowl? And is he going to not be the same guy? Because if you watch Cam Newton in 2016, he wasn't nearly the same guy as he was in 2015. Which you would have thought, and part of the reason why I thought this team could potentially be right back in the mix again, is they did all of that. 15-1, explosive big play offense. And they didn't even have their best pass catcher on the outside, 2014 first-round pick Kelvin Benjamin. He was coming off of a torn ACL. So you're sitting there thinking to yourself, my God, what could they do with Kelvin Benjamin? You throw him in the mix with Greg Olsen, and you've got Cam Newton in that rocket arm. They got to be able to do something. Well, they did. They started off 1-5. And frankly, at that point in time, even though you thought maybe there was a small glimmer of hope that this team would get right, and with what we perceived as a weaker division, you started off 1-5, you could still keep yourself in the mix. That wasn't a reality, and it never happened. I mean, because they didn't even handle business in their own division. They finished 1-5. 1-5 in the NFC South, a division they had won 3 straight years. After all those years of the divisional winner flipping from team to team from one year to the next, here's the Carolina Panthers. They were establishing themselves as the class of the division, and this year they go 1-5? 1-5. Oof. So when you look at a poor divisional performance, a horrible start, when you watch the Carolina Panthers, I don't really need to talk about it a whole lot. I mean, sure, they had injuries like Luke Kuechly missed some games, and you lost Josh Norman via free agency. Kelvin Benjamin wasn't fully back to form. Greg Olsen was great, but Jonathan Stewart missed several games. This team really struggled to protect Cam Newton in the passing game once again. They just didn't have it. And sometimes that's the best way to put it. A team just doesn't have it. Now, as we head into this offseason, you can still sit there and say this is a team that's potentially poised for a rebound. Instead of getting a first-place schedule like they had last year as the defending conference champions, they're going to have a last-place schedule. They're going to have a bit of a reminder of how hard you have to work. There's going to be potentially a hunger to get back and not allow what happened in 2016 to happen again in 2017. But nothing is guaranteed. I mean, This team had occasional moments where they played well and they looked a little bit like their former selves, but it was striking to me just how different this team was from one year to the next for a team that in particular did not lose a ton in the offseason. They really kept a lot of their core intact. I mean, you still had Kuechly and Davis. Even though, like I said, Kuechly missed several games. You had Kawan Short and Latulele. You had Charles Johnson, Coney Ely. You lost Josh Norman out of the secondary, but again, most of the defense was back. Most of the offense was back too. And you had added Kelvin Benjamin to the mix. It's unbelievable. It makes you really wonder just how much there is to that Super Bowl curse, that Super Bowl loser's curse. Now, in terms of the Panthers in 2016, one of the things in a lost season like this, or disappointing season, and they were easily the most disappointing team in the NFL, one of the things you look to is your draft class. I thought Vernon Butler had some flashes and some moments, and long term he's going to be a starter. It's just a matter of whether this team picks Short or Latulele in terms of the other guy that they want to pair with him long term. I thought James Bradberry got better as the year went along. Daryl Worley's got some work, some big time work to come. But I think Bradberry showed that he can at least be a starting quarter at the NFL level. But he was far from dominant, that's for sure. He didn't show me dominant flashes. And again, this is a secondary that gave up a lot of yards and a lot of points. And for the Panthers to be successful, they have to rectify that. They have to get better in that area. They have to be able to stop the passing game better. Because they could stop the run pretty well. They could at times generate some pass rush, although it wasn't consistent. But they just have to get better in the back end of that defense, because this is a team that relies upon quality defense and being able to control the clock and run the football and then get some big plays in the passing game as their formula for success. And it just didn't work out in 2016. But hopefully guys like Butler, Bradberry, and Worley develop and get even better for them, because if they do, the Panthers could potentially be right back in the mix again. Good thing for this organization, Gettleman's done a good job of positioning themselves well for this offseason. They've got close to $50 million in cap space, and you've already got Cam Newton under a big long-term contract, Luke Kuechly as well. So some of the core guys already have big-time money, but they ultimately are going to have to make a decision. Are you going to pay Kawan Short or start Latulele? Now, Latulele is under his fifth-year option, so there's no rush to have to give him a big contract. But Kawan Short is an unrestricted free agent. Now, maybe you franchise him. At the end of the day, I expect them to choose Short over Latulele, and then come the 2018 season, Butler takes Latulele's role, and it'll be Butler and Short in the middle. I would expect at the end of the day, the Panthers, worst case scenario, they're going to franchise Kawan Short for that 1 year and try to punt the ball down the road for another year. Otherwise, what I would think is they're going to get the long-term deal done. He's the number one priority. They have to get him done, and that's who I expect them to ultimately choose. Mario Addison's a free agent. I would anticipate they'll try to re-sign him, although you wonder just how much they might have to overpay in order to keep him. I don't know if they'll bring back Charles Johnson. There's a part of me that thinks that they'll let him go. With some of this cap space, though, they've got to start also looking ahead for that 2014 draft class is now 3 years into their NFL run, which means they are now eligible to have their contracts renegotiated. You've got Kelvin Benjamin, Coney Ely, Trey Turner, Trey Boston, your first 4-round picks from that draft. This is the point in time where you want to start thinking about whether or not they're going to be part of your long-term future, and if they are your long-term plans, then you need to hurry up and get them re-signed, because you don't want them to go another year or so and then hit the open market and then watch their value skyrocket, and you have to pay them even more than you should have. So the good thing is for the Panthers, they've got some flexibility. They've got plenty of cap space to keep some of the guys long-term that they want to keep. In terms of going out and spending big in free agency, that's probably not in the cards, but that's not necessarily the way they need to do things anyways. In terms of this draft, they've got their first-round pick, which is 8th overall, second, a third, I would assume maybe some type of compensatory pick somewhere down the road for Josh Norman, although I can't remember based off of what happened if they lose the compensatory pick. I can't remember, honestly. But they've at least got a first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth round pick. Still not a team with a ton of holes, but they've got some glaring areas of need. Like for me on the offensive side of the ball, left tackle is a huge need. They have to find a better blindside protector for Cam Newton, period. And I think most Panther fans agree that that's the number one need. My money, the number two need is safety. They really need a playmaking safety. No more of the Roman Harper types or the Mike Mitchell types. I know they're not there now, but you get what I'm saying. they need somebody that can be an impact player, a difference maker in that secondary at the safety position. Because if they had one, it would have at least helped soften the blow for losing Josh Norman in free agency. To me, those are the two biggest needs, although I think you could throw a running back in there. Jonathan Stewart's over age 30 now. He's a guy that's consistently proven throughout his career you can't be counted on to play 16 games. And when you look at where the Carolina Panthers are drafting at pick 8, there's probably a hope in their organization that somebody like Leonard Fournette is there on the board for them. Because at that point in time, he could come in and make a real impact both offensively and on that defense as well, because of just how much the Carolina Panthers would be able to control the clock. And imagine having Leonard Fournette and Cam Newton in the same backfield. I think in an ideal world for the Carolina Panthers, that would be their guy at number 8. But maybe somebody like a Jamal Adams, or in particular with the injury, Malik Hooker potentially is there at number 8. One guy to keep your eye on for the Carolina Panthers, though, at number 8 is Corey Davis. Look, at the end of the day, this is a team that's Greg Olsen at tight end, but he's over age 30 now, or close to it, I believe. You have Kelvin Benjamin on the outside, but he's coming up into contract territory soon. And then you have some concerns about how he looked in 2016. And then you've got Ted Ginn, who can get open but can't catch. You got Devin Funchess, who's never really shown you that much in his 2 years in the league. They really need another option in the passing game. So to me, in terms of an ideal world for the Carolina Panthers, if they could get into a situation where somehow, some way, Malik Hooker, Cam Robinson, Leonard Fournette, and Corey Davis were all on the board, it would be really, really hard for them to go wrong with any of those 4 guys, but more so a Hooker, a Fournette, or a Corey Davis. I think the Carolina Panthers, and in particular Gettleman in round 1, likes to typically approach the draft with a best player available philosophy. In that particular case, there would be some really compelling options there. I'd love to see him draft a Corey Davis and have Cam Newton be able to have an even more reliable target to throw to on the outside. And I think it would make a lot of sense. But I think Fournette perhaps makes the most immediate sense because he has the most immediate impact in terms of how he can impact that team both offensively and defensively. At the end of the day, the Carolina Panthers look like they're a long ways away, especially based off of what happened in 2016. And I'm not going to understate again the mental impact of that bad year and Cam Newton's poor performance. But it doesn't take much in the NFL, and we've seen it before. Get guys to stay a little healthier, get some guys to develop and grow, bring in the right talent here and there. And this is still a Panthers team that can be right back in the mix in the NFC, not just the South, but in the NFC conference race throughout all of 2017.